The movie Materialists has gained significant attention as one of the standout releases of the year, blending entertainment with thought-provoking themes. This film has captured audiences with its unique storytelling, strong performances, and polished production values. In today's breakdown, we will explore every important detail about Materialists, from its concept and filming journey to behind-the-scenes facts, the cast's contributions, and the impact it has left on both critics and fans. If you are a movie enthusiast who enjoys learning about how films come together, this overview will give you a complete picture of what makes Materialists worth watching. Materialists is a film that focuses on ambition, desire, and the complexities of relationships in a fast-moving modern world. The storyline follows characters driven by material pursuits, showing both the glamorous and darker sides of their lives. At its core, the movie is a character study that questions how far people are willing to go in search of wealth and recognition, while also exploring the emotional costs that come with such choices. The plot manages to balance drama with moments of subtle humor, making it a multidimensional narrative that speaks to today's audience. The development of Materialists started with a strong script that attracted both producers and directors who believed in its potential. During the pre-production phase, a lot of attention was given to casting the right actors for each role. Every performer was carefully selected to bring authenticity and depth to the characters. Costumes, set designs, and the overall look of the film were also meticulously planned to reflect the lifestyle and environment of the story. This preparation ensured that once cameras started rolling, the filmmakers had a clear vision of what they wanted to achieve. Filming Materialists was no small task, as it involved multiple locations that visually represented the contrasts between wealth and struggle. The cinematography plays a major role in highlighting the luxurious backdrops while still capturing intimate moments of vulnerability. Directors and camera crews used modern techniques to give the film a crisp and stylish look without losing its emotional resonance. The effort put into lighting, framing, and overall visual design is evident in every scene. The music of Materialists is another major highlight. The soundtrack blends contemporary tracks with emotional scores that enhance the mood of the film. From upbeat sequences to more contemplative moments, the background music seamlessly supports the storytelling. Music has always been a key factor in how audiences connect to a film, and here it adds another layer of depth by amplifying the emotions of the characters. Post-production was just as detailed, with editors ensuring that the film flowed smoothly and remained engaging throughout. The pacing is balanced, neither rushing through important plot points nor dragging unnecessarily. Special effects, though used sparingly, were handled with precision to maintain realism while still adding visual appeal. Sound design and color grading polished the final cut, creating a cinematic product that stands out both technically and artistically. Budget and box office numbers also play an important part in a film's journey. Materialists was produced with a significant budget that allowed for high-quality production values, from set construction to hiring a talented crew. This investment paid off as the movie performed strongly at the box office, appealing to a wide audience who appreciated its mix of entertainment and meaningful storytelling. The success has also highlighted the growing demand for films that combine glamour with substance. The cast of Materialists delivered powerful performances that elevated the script. Each actor fully embraced their role, whether portraying ambition, vulnerability, or moral conflict. The lead actor in particular gave a standout performance that captured both the charisma and flaws of the central character. Supporting actors brought richness to the film, portraying friends, rivals, and love interests with authenticity. Their chemistry on screen contributed greatly to the film's impact, leaving audiences with memorable moments long after the credits rolled. From a critical perspective, Materialists has been praised for its fresh take on familiar themes. While stories about wealth and ambition have been explored before, this film manages to bring new energy through sharp dialogue, modern settings, and characters that feel relatable to today's viewers. The direction keeps the narrative engaging, while the performances ensure emotional weight. Although some critics pointed out minor pacing issues, the overall reception has been positive, with many considering it a must-watch drama of the year. In summary, Materialists is not just another film about luxury and ambition. It is a layered story that examines human desires, relationships, and the cost of chasing material success. With strong pre-production planning, visually appealing cinematography, a memorable soundtrack, and outstanding performances from its cast, the film succeeds in delivering both entertainment and depth. Whether you are interested in the behind-the-scenes process, the performances of the actors, or the broader message of the story, Materialists offers something for every type of viewer. This movie proves that cinema can be both glamorous and meaningful, making it a standout entry in modern filmmaking. Materialists, written and directed by Celine Song, follows Lucy Mason, a former actress turned elite matchmaker in New York City who runs the high-end boutique agency Adore and whose job is to curate picture-perfect relationships by matching clients to partners who meet exacting lists of material and emotional criteria. Lucy, played by Dakota Johnson, is brilliant at reading people and crafting narratives that help clients present their best selves, yet she increasingly feels hollow watching love reduced to checklists and status symbols. Her world is shaken when two men re-enter her orbit: John Finch, her charismatic but struggling ex who still chases theater work while waiting tables, played by Chris Evans, and Harry Castillo, a polished and wealthy financier who seems to embody everything Lucy's clients prize, played by Pedro Pascal. The core of the story is a love triangle, but Song uses that framework to explore broader questions about authenticity, aspiration, and what people actually want versus what they advertise they want. Lucy's agency assigns her a long-term client, Sophie, played by Zoe Winters, whose resistance to settling and fear of appearing compromised forces Lucy to confront the limitations of her professional yardsticks when Sophie admits to feeling trapped by her own standards. As Lucy helps clients like Sophie and a series of other singles, including a soon-to-be married Charlotte, Louisa Jacobson, and office colleague Daisy, Dasha Nekrasova, prepare for the social rituals of dating and marriage, she starts to see patterns in how people dress desire and rationalize compromise. The film alternates between polished matchmaking montages, intimate one-on-one conversations, and scenes that reveal the backstage compromises of relationships. John represents spontaneity and emotional risk. He reconnects with Lucy by reminding her of the small, messy pleasures of being seen by someone who knows her without needing a resume. Harry, on the other hand, offers stability, social leverage, and the kind of future many clients dream of, which in practice looks like a house in the suburbs, invitations to the right parties, and a life that can be planned and optimized. As Lucy negotiates dates and disclosures, she starts experimenting with her own dating criteria, sometimes applying her professional logic to her personal life and learning, through missteps, how that logic fails in matters of the heart. The plot reaches a turning point when Lucy must decide whether to help Sophie make a life choice that contradicts what Lucy believes in privately, and whether to accept a life with Harry that would secure social assent but might leave her emotionally isolated, or to rekindle something unpredictable with John that may not be sustainable in practical terms. Along the way, supporting characters reveal their own compromises. Violet, Marin Ireland, Lucy's boss, pushes an agenda of brand building and margins that tests Lucy's ethics. Co-worker Daisy highlights the ways younger professionals internalize dating as project management, and various clients and dates underscore how hurt and longing are often hidden beneath curated profiles. The film deliberately slows at moments to let small interactions, a missed cue in a conversation, an offhand compliment, a forgotten anniversary, accumulate meaning, showing that the arithmetic of compatibility cannot capture the gravitational pull of real attachment. Cinematically, the film balances gloss and grit, using New York's luxury interiors and quieter, lived-in spaces to visualize the tension between exterior polish and interior uncertainty. By the final act, Lucy makes choices that are less about picking the right man and more about choosing how she wants to live, whether to prioritize public narratives of success or to accept a less tidy but more genuine version of intimacy. The resolution favors emotional honesty over surface-level success, but Song resists neat moralizing. Characters walk away changed rather than redeemed, and the film leaves open questions about how much of modern romantic life will remain negotiable in an age of commodified desire. Materialists positions Dakota Johnson's Lucy as a deeply sympathetic protagonist whose expertise at pairing others exposes her own vulnerabilities. Chris Evans' John as a reminder of the unpredictable rewards of risk, and Pedro Pascal's Harry as the seductive ideal of material security, with a supporting ensemble that includes Zoe Winters, Marin Ireland, Dasha Nekrasova, Louisa Jacobson, and others who flesh out the social ecology of dating in the film's world. Materialists begins with an opening image that sets the tone for everything that follows. We see Lucy Mason, played by Dakota Johnson, carefully arranging a meeting space for her matchmaking agency. The office is pristine, almost sterile, with designer furniture, flowers arranged in exact symmetry, and glossy portfolios neatly stacked. This polished environment immediately communicates how controlled and calculated her world is. From the very first scene, the film signals that its subject is the management of relationships as a product, rather than the raw emotion that love represents. Lucy's confident demeanor shows her skill at orchestrating the illusion of perfection for her wealthy clientele, but the absence of warmth in the opening sequence also hints at the emotional emptiness underneath. The setup continues as we are introduced to Lucy's daily routine. She meets clients, evaluates their lists of desired traits in partners, and manages her staff. These scenes are brisk and efficient, mirroring the transactional nature of her work. Yet the inciting incident disrupts this order. Lucy unexpectedly reconnects with John Finch, her ex-boyfriend played by Chris Evans. Their meeting is unplanned and awkward, taking place in a modest cafe far removed from the polished spaces Lucy usually inhabits. John's presence unsettles her carefully curated life, not because he poses a professional problem, but because he represents the opposite of her controlled world. He is unpredictable, emotionally open, and financially unstable. The reappearance of John is what forces Lucy's personal and professional lives onto a collision course. The rising action builds as Lucy also becomes entangled with Harry Castillo, played by Pedro Pascal, a wealthy financier who embodies everything her clients typically desire. Their introduction is staged at a high-profile social event, with Harry presented as polished, charming, and effortlessly confident. Where John embodies spontaneity and emotional risk, Harry embodies stability and social prestige. Lucy's growing involvement with both men sets up the love triangle at the heart of the narrative, but the real tension comes from how these relationships expose her own contradictions. On the one hand, she promotes the idea of compatibility through measurable criteria. On the other hand, her own feelings defy those same rules. Midway through the film, a pivotal turning point arrives when Lucy is tasked with handling the case of Sophie, played by Zoe Winters, one of her most challenging clients. Sophie refuses to compromise, clinging to ideals that Lucy knows are unsustainable. While guiding Sophie through her choices, Lucy begins to see her own reflection in Sophie's stubbornness. This subplot functions as a mirror to Lucy's internal struggle, showing how difficult it is to separate logic from longing. The middle of the film carefully layers professional challenges with personal entanglements, blurring the line between Lucy's curated advice and her messy emotional reality. As the second half unfolds, the narrative tightens. John re-enters Lucy's life more deeply, drawing her into small but meaningful moments. An impromptu walk through the city, a late-night conversation about her former dreams of acting, and a dinner at a cheap restaurant that feels more intimate than any high-end gala. These scenes are understated but emotionally powerful, reminding Lucy of what it feels like to be known outside of her curated persona. In contrast, her interactions with Harry grow more structured and performative, with every detail polished to meet societal expectations. The contrast between John's imperfect authenticity and Harry's flawless surface becomes the central conflict. The climax arrives when Lucy must choose between endorsing Sophie's decision, which contradicts the values of her agency, and following through with a major contract that Violet, her boss played by Marin Ireland, insists she cannot lose. This professional dilemma runs parallel to her romantic one. At this point, the narrative pushes Lucy to recognize that she cannot maintain two lives: the image-driven professional matchmaker and the vulnerable woman searching for real connection. The pressure peaks in a confrontation with both Harry and John, where Lucy realizes that her decision is not about picking one man over the other, but about deciding what kind of life she wants to live. The finale avoids neat resolution. Lucy chooses honesty over performance, stepping away from certain professional and personal obligations. The final beat shows her in a quieter setting, no longer in the glossy office or glamorous parties, but in an unadorned, lived-in space that suggests freedom from performance. The ending leaves room for interpretation, resisting a clean romantic closure. Instead of showing her walking into a happily ever after, the film emphasizes her willingness to embrace uncertainty, which feels truer to the story's themes. Narratively, Materialists unfolds in a linear fashion, but it uses pacing and contrasts between polished and raw moments to create emotional peaks. The structure highlights how life cannot be reduced to a checklist, no matter how polished the presentation. The deliberate gaps, like leaving Lucy's final romantic choice ambiguous, invite viewers to reflect on their own values. The story is at once entertaining and thoughtful, delivering a journey that starts with control and ends with openness. The key turning points, from John's reappearance to Sophie's challenging case and Lucy's ultimate decision, all serve to question what truly matters in love and life. The character development in Materialists is central to its impact, as the film thrives less on plot mechanics and more on how its characters evolve under pressure. At the center is Lucy Mason, played by Dakota Johnson. When the movie begins, Lucy is a highly competent professional running the boutique matchmaking agency Adore. She exudes control and confidence, presenting herself as someone who knows exactly what people want and how to give it to them. Beneath the surface, however, she is a woman who has constructed a life around appearances while suppressing her own doubts and desires. What she wants at first seems clear: professional success, validation for her ability to engineer relationships, and the financial stability that comes with running a luxury service. But as the narrative unfolds, it becomes obvious that what she actually yearns for is emotional authenticity, something her curated world denies her. Lucy's arc is carefully built through small gestures and moments. In the early scenes, her mannerisms are controlled: straight posture, polite but calculated smiles, and a careful avoidance of vulnerability. Yet when she reunites with John Finch, her ex-boyfriend played by Chris Evans, subtle cracks appear. A fleeting look when he recalls their past, the hesitation in her voice when she brushes off his jokes, and even the way she fidgets with her glass in a cafe scene all signal that Lucy's exterior is beginning to erode. By the film's end, she has shifted from prioritizing polish to embracing imperfection. Her growth is not dramatized in a single sweeping moment, but through layered choices that show her accepting uncertainty and risk in both love and life. John serves as both a character in his own right and a catalyst for Lucy's change. When we meet him, he is struggling financially and professionally, waiting tables while still chasing acting opportunities. What he wants is not money or status, but recognition for who he is and the chance to live honestly. His obstacle is the world's indifference to his dreams and his inability to meet the material standards that Lucy's clients would consider essential. Unlike Lucy, John is not pretending to be someone he is not, but his vulnerability often makes him seem inadequate in a society that prizes appearances. His growth is subtler than Lucy's. He does not dramatically transform, but he reminds Lucy, and the audience, of the value of authenticity. The key scenes that show John's role in her arc are the simple ones: a cheap dinner where he insists that sharing small joys matters more than status, or the way he remembers details about Lucy's former ambitions that she herself has buried. Harry Castillo, played by Pedro Pascal, represents the opposite force. Introduced as a wealthy financier, Harry is polished, charming, and immediately appealing to Lucy's professional instincts. What he wants is control, not necessarily over Lucy herself but over his life narrative. He thrives in environments where everything is planned, from the parties he hosts to the relationships he engages in. His obstacle is that real intimacy resists such planning. Harry does not undergo much change, but he functions as the antagonist to Lucy's growth. He represents the lure of material security, the very temptation that defines her career. His most revealing moments are not confrontations but quiet exchanges, such as when he offhandedly remarks that unpredictability is a liability. That line crystallizes what he stands for and why he cannot ultimately provide what Lucy seeks. Supporting characters also add dimension rather than serving as mere background. Sophie, played by Zoe Winters, mirrors Lucy's rigidity in the early stages. She wants a partner who matches her checklist, but what stands in her way is her refusal to accept compromise. Through Sophie, Lucy sees the consequences of living strictly by material standards. Sophie's breakthrough moment, when she admits to feeling trapped by her own ideals, forces Lucy to acknowledge her own entrapment. Violet, Lucy's boss played by Maren Ireland, embodies the business-first mentality of the matchmaking agency. She is less a villain than a reminder of the system that rewards appearances. Her sharp dialogue and pragmatic outlook highlight the pressures Lucy faces in maintaining the agency's success. Daisy, played by Dasha Nekrasova, adds a generational perspective, showing how younger professionals internalize dating as a task to be managed rather than an emotion to be experienced. What makes the character development in Materialists effective is that changes are often shown through understated beats rather than grand speeches. Lucy's arc is illustrated in how she gradually lets go of her polished exterior, a gesture of leaning back comfortably instead of maintaining perfect posture, an unplanned laugh at John's joke, or her decision to sit in silence with a client rather than filling the space with curated advice. These small choices accumulate into a portrait of transformation. By the end, Lucy has not abandoned her intelligence or her skills, but she has redefined success for herself. She accepts that not every relationship can be managed like a business deal, and not every dream can be measured against material standards. John remains a reminder of emotional risk, Harry remains a reminder of material comfort, and Lucy becomes a person willing to navigate the tension between the two. The supporting characters, far from being window dressing, reflect pieces of her struggle and force her to confront what she values most. This layered character development makes Materialists not just a story about romance but a study of identity, ambition, and authenticity. The performances in Materialists are the driving force that elevate the film beyond its polished surfaces and into something emotionally resonant. The ensemble cast manages to embody characters that could have felt archetypal on the page, but through nuance and precision, they deliver portrayals that feel lived in. Each actor brings a distinct texture to the story, whether through grand dramatic moments or quiet gestures that carry surprising weight. At the center of the film is Dakota Johnson as Lucy Mason, and it is clear that the entire movie rests on her ability to communicate a woman torn between two worlds. Johnson disappears into the role by grounding Lucy's contradictions in small physical and vocal choices. In the opening act, she carries herself with impeccable posture, her voice calm and measured, as though every sentence has been rehearsed. These choices create a sense of a woman always in performance mode. As the story progresses, her delivery softens, her gestures loosen, and her expressions reveal cracks in the polished facade. A particularly effective moment comes during a dinner scene with John when she lets out an unrestrained laugh. It is such a contrast to her earlier composure that the audience immediately feels the shift in Lucy's inner life. Johnson never pushes the character into melodrama. Instead, she allows subtle beats, a glance, a pause, a shift in tone, to chart Lucy's transformation. Chris Evans as John Finch brings a different kind of energy to the film, and it is this contrast that makes his performance memorable. Evans leans into John's vulnerability, portraying him not as a failed dreamer but as a man unafraid to live without armor. His physicality is looser, his voice warmer, and his timing impeccable in balancing humor with sincerity. One of the film's standout moments is a monologue where John recalls a failed audition. Evans plays it with a mix of self-deprecation and raw honesty, making the audience understand why Lucy would be drawn to him despite his lack of social or financial status. The chemistry between Evans and Johnson feels organic, built on shared silences and unspoken history rather than grand declarations. Their scenes together sell the relationship because of the trust they display in simply being present with one another. Pedro Pascal as Harry Castillo embodies the opposite pole with finesse. He brings polish, charm, and quiet authority to the role, embodying everything Lucy's clients would find ideal. Pascal's performance is notable for how carefully calibrated it is. He rarely raises his voice, and his physical presence is controlled, almost statuesque. This restraint gives Harry a magnetic quality but also makes clear why he feels emotionally inaccessible. His most telling moment is a brief, almost throwaway line about unpredictability being a liability. Pascal delivers it with such casual conviction that it crystallizes his character's worldview. While he may not generate the same warmth as Evans, his precision makes Harry a credible foil, embodying the seductive allure of stability and power. Among the supporting players, Zoe Winters as Sophie is a standout. She takes what could have been a one-dimensional role, the client with impossible standards, and turns it into a portrait of quiet desperation. Her performance shines in a scene where Sophie admits she feels trapped by her own ideals. Winters delivers the confession with restraint, her voice cracking just slightly, making the moment all the more heartbreaking. It is a performance that lingers because it feels grounded in the anxieties many people share but rarely articulate. Marin Ireland as Violet, Lucy's boss, is another subtle scene stealer. With sharp delivery and a no-nonsense demeanor, she perfectly embodies the pragmatism of someone who views relationships as transactions. Ireland's performance works not because of volume or dramatics, but because of precision. Every word feels like it has been weighed for efficiency, highlighting Violet as a person who has little patience for sentiment. She represents a professional world that Lucy is trying to break free from, and Ireland sells that tension without ever needing to overstate it. Dasha Nekrasova as Daisy adds a lighter note, portraying a younger colleague who approaches dating as a task to manage. Nekrasova uses comedic timing to bring levity, but she also conveys the sadness beneath the humor, showing how even the next generation is trapped in the machinery of curated love. Louisa Jacobson as Charlotte and smaller supporting roles round out the world with performances that, while brief, feel specific and purposeful rather than filler. If there is one critique to make of the ensemble, it is that sometimes the polish of the performances mirrors the film's thematic critique. In certain moments, particularly in high-society party scenes, even strong performers can feel slightly out of step with the material because the gloss overshadows the grit. A line that might otherwise land with emotional force sometimes gets swallowed by the stylish setting. Yet these moments are rare, and the overall effect remains cohesive. What makes the acting in Materialists memorable is the balance between quiet realism and carefully constructed contrasts. Johnson carries the film with a layered portrayal of internal conflict. Evans provides warmth and spontaneity that challenge her composure. Pascal brings elegance and restraint that embody temptation without vulnerability. The supporting cast adds depth, with Winters and Ireland standing out for their ability to transform side roles into mirrors of the protagonist's struggle. Together, the performances breathe life into the narrative, turning written beats into emotions that resonate long after the film ends. The direction of Materialists is the unifying force that gives the film its identity, guiding not only how the story unfolds but also how the audience experiences its emotional weight. Celine Song, who previously made a strong impression with Past Lives, brings a measured, deliberate vision to this film. Her direction is characterized by restraint, precision, and a willingness to let quiet moments breathe rather than forcing drama with heavy-handed tactics. The result is a film that feels as carefully curated as the world it depicts, while still allowing space for the messy human emotions beneath. From the outset, Song establishes tone through her staging. The opening sequence in Lucy's pristine office uses still, symmetrical framing that mirrors the controlled, polished lives of her wealthy clientele. This kind of composition recurs throughout the film in scenes where characters are performing roles for each other or for society. Song often contrasts these with looser, handheld or softly lit shots when Lucy interacts with John, emphasizing the difference between the curated and the authentic. The stylistic choice of juxtaposing controlled environments with freer, more naturalistic camera work gives the audience a visceral sense of Lucy's inner conflict without the need for exposition. Song also shows an acute sensitivity to pacing. Materialists does not rush, it builds slowly, layering interactions that at first seem incidental but accumulate meaning over time. A casual conversation in a cafe, a glance exchanged at a party, or an awkward pause in a matchmaking session all contribute to the larger emotional arc. This patience may test viewers accustomed to faster storytelling, but it suits the subject matter. By allowing the silences and pauses to linger, Song captures the discomfort of characters trapped between what they want and what they believe they should want. The slower rhythm highlights the tension between surface-level success and deeper dissatisfaction. When it comes to guiding actors, Song demonstrates remarkable confidence. She avoids showy melodrama and instead cultivates performances built on nuance. Dakota Johnson's portrayal of Lucy benefits from this approach. The director's steady hand encourages subtlety, allowing Johnson to reveal transformation through body language and micro-expressions rather than overt declarations. Similarly, Chris Evans and Pedro Pascal are directed to embody contrasting energies without tipping into caricature. Evans's looseness feels organic, while Pascal's control radiates quiet authority. These contrasts are heightened not by exaggerated blocking but by thoughtful positioning within the frame. Evans is often placed in warmer, looser spaces, while Pascal is framed within structured, symmetrical environments. Song's stylistic signatures include her use of long takes that avoid cutting away during moments of tension. Rather than relying on quick edits to manufacture energy, she trusts the actors to sustain the emotion. In one particularly memorable sequence, Lucy listens to Sophie describe her fear of compromise. The camera lingers without interruption, allowing the audience to sit with both Sophie's vulnerability and Lucy's silent recognition of herself in that confession. The effect is intimate and unsettling, highlighting how much can be revealed when the camera simply observes. At the same time, Song is not afraid to use abrupt cuts when the story demands it. She occasionally slices away from an emotionally charged moment to a sterile professional setting, a deliberate jolt that underscores the divide between Lucy's inner life and her outer role. This technique prevents the film from becoming too meditative and reminds viewers of the social machinery that structures the characters' lives. These choices reveal a director who knows when to let moments expand and when to cut them short for maximum contrast. The staging of party scenes and social gatherings also reflects Song's directorial precision. Crowded interiors are choreographed so that Lucy often appears slightly isolated, framed between conversations or visually separated from the flow of movement. These directorial decisions subtly reinforce her detachment, even in spaces designed to be glamorous and communal. Song uses mise-en-scene as storytelling, ensuring that environment mirrors psychology. There are, however, moments where the directorial style risks undercutting the film's momentum. The commitment to slow pacing occasionally drifts into indulgence, with scenes that feel more like mood pieces than necessary steps forward. Some viewers may find this restraint admirable, while others may perceive it as a lack of urgency. Additionally, the symmetrical framing, while elegant, can sometimes emphasize polish to the point of distancing viewers emotionally. Yet even these questionable choices feel deliberate, part of a larger vision of exploring the tension between surface and depth. Overall, Song's directorial control shapes Materialists into a coherent and distinctive experience. She guides tone through contrasts in cinematography, builds character through patient pacing, and uses visual language to externalize internal conflict. Her preference for long takes and careful staging underscores authenticity, while her occasional abrupt cuts and rigid frames highlight the artificiality of social performance. Even when her style risks slowing the narrative, it remains consistent with her thematic vision. Materialists ultimately works because the director never loses sight of the human core beneath the polished exteriors. Every decision, from camera placement to the rhythm of dialogue, reinforces the film's exploration of love, desire, and the price of living by appearances. Celine's song proves once again that her voice as a filmmaker is not only distinctive but deeply attuned to the emotional complexities of modern life. Her direction ensures that Materialists is more than just a story about relationships. It is an immersive study of how people curate, compromise, and ultimately confront their true selves. The cinematography of Materialists plays a crucial role in shaping the film's identity, not merely as a visual companion to the story but as an active participant in expressing its themes. Cinematographer André Turpin crafts images that highlight the tension between curated perfection and raw authenticity, echoing Lucy's internal conflict as she navigates her professional and personal worlds. Through deliberate framing, calculated movement, and thoughtful use of light and color, the camera reveals the layers beneath the characters' polished surfaces and guides the audience into the emotional undercurrents driving the narrative. From the first frame, the visual design establishes tone. The opening shot of Lucy's immaculate office is composed with perfect symmetry. Sleek furniture, soft natural light filtered through sheer curtains, and muted colors that reflect control and precision. This framing introduces Lucy's environment as one of order and artifice, where every object is placed to project success. The cinematography makes it clear that her world is constructed, not lived in. Contrast this with later scenes of Lucy and John together in casual, less refined spaces, where the camera loosens its grip, moving handheld and slightly imperfect, giving viewers the sense of spontaneity and warmth. The contrast between these two visual styles captures the film's central tension between performance and authenticity. One of the film's strongest visual signatures is its use of wide versus tight framing. Wide shots dominate social settings, such as matchmaking events and high society parties, often isolating Lucy in the midst of crowded rooms. These compositions emphasize her detachment, showing how even in glamorous environments she remains separate from the collective. By comparison, the cinematography employs tight, intimate framing for Lucy's interactions with John. Close-ups linger on her face when she laughs or hesitates, allowing the audience to register micro-expressions that reveal vulnerability. The shift from wide distance to tight intimacy visually communicates the difference between the roles Lucy plays for others and the person she is when she lets her guard down. Lighting also becomes a storytelling tool. For Lucy's professional life, lighting tends to be clean, cool, and evenly distributed, reinforcing the sense of control. In contrast, scenes with John often take place in dimmer, warmer light, cafes with golden glows, late-night walks under street lamps, and cluttered apartments where shadows soften the edges of the frame. These choices reflect Lucy's emotional state. In her curated spaces, she is sharp and guarded, while in her personal moments, she is bathed in warmth and allowed to relax. A striking example comes during a dinner scene where Lucy sits across from John in a modest restaurant. The light is uneven, flickering slightly from candles, and the shadows play across her face. For the first time, her features are not perfectly lit, symbolizing her willingness to step into imperfection. Color palettes in Materialists are equally deliberate. The film relies on cool grays, soft blues, and beige tones for Lucy's professional world, evoking sterility and control. By contrast, earthier tones dominate her interactions with John, browns, deep greens, and muted golds that evoke naturalness and imperfection. Harry's presence, on the other hand, is often paired with sharp blacks, silvers, and crisp whites, reflecting his polished exterior and his association with power and stability. This use of color not only distinguishes environments but also underscores the thematic contrasts between Lucy's choices. Standout shots reinforce these ideas. One particularly memorable image comes during a party scene with Harry, where Lucy is framed between two mirrors. The reflections multiply her image, suggesting the fractured identities she performs. Another striking moment occurs late in the film when Lucy sits alone on a subway. The framing is wide, showing her small figure against the industrial backdrop, emphasizing both her isolation and the possibility of escape from curated spaces. These images linger because they visually encapsulate the story's central conflicts without relying on dialogue. Camera movement further defines the film's tone. Materialists avoids excessive showiness, favoring measured pans and slow tracking shots. This restraint reflects the controlled environments in which the characters operate. Yet when Lucy and John reconnect, the camera occasionally shifts into looser, handheld movement, echoing the unpredictability and intimacy of their relationship. These choices are subtle but effective, giving viewers a subconscious sense of transition as Lucy navigates between two worlds. Perhaps the most striking element of the cinematography is how it refuses to be merely decorative. Every choice, from color to framing, is essential in reinforcing the themes. When Lucy delivers advice to clients under bright, even light, the film highlights her authority and the artificiality of her role. When she is caught in shadow or imperfect lighting, the film reveals cracks in her composure. Even moments of stillness carry weight, as the cinematography emphasizes what is unspoken, the hesitation in her eyes, the way she shifts uncomfortably in her seat, or the physical distance between characters across a room. If there are moments where the cinematography risks being too controlled, it is in some of the symmetrical compositions that echo the sterile world of matchmaking. While visually elegant, these shots occasionally create distance from the characters, reminding the audience of the artificiality of the frame. Yet this critique is also part of the film's design, as the cinematography itself mirrors Lucy's struggle between polished surfaces and emotional authenticity. In the end, the visual language of Materialists is inseparable from its story. André Turpin's cinematography gives shape to Celine Song's vision, using framing, color, and light to externalize the characters' internal struggles. It is not decoration but narrative in itself, guiding viewers to feel the contrasts between curated perfection and genuine connection. The standout images, Lucy in mirrored reflections, Lucy in warm candlelight, Lucy dwarfed by a subway car, remain etched in memory, underscoring how the camera sees not just the characters' appearances but the truths they cannot easily articulate. The editing and pacing of Materialists are central to how the story unfolds, guiding the audience through shifts in tone, character revelations, and emotional peaks. Editor Keith Fraze crafts a rhythm that balances the film's intellectual exploration of class, love, and ambition with the personal intimacy of Lucy's journey. The editing does not simply serve as a technical backbone but becomes a storytelling device that either accelerates the narrative in moments of tension or slows it down to let viewers sit with the characters' emotions. By shaping time so carefully, the film allows its themes to breathe while also maintaining enough forward momentum to keep audiences invested. The opening act is marked by deliberate pacing. Early scenes of Lucy working as a high-end matchmaker are presented with clean cuts and steady transitions. The editing reflects the precision of her profession and the control she tries to maintain over her life. Sequences of Lucy coaching clients are cut with rhythmic efficiency, mirroring the transactional and procedural nature of her work. This choice establishes a baseline tempo that feels restrained, almost mechanical, signaling that Lucy herself is performing a role. By contrast, when Lucy reconnects with John, the rhythm loosens. Cuts linger a fraction longer, allowing silences to stretch, giving their conversations weight and vulnerability. These shifts in editing pace subtly mirror Lucy's emotional state, showing how she toggles between rigid professionalism and authentic intimacy. Montages play a significant role in keeping momentum alive without relying on heavy exposition. A notable example comes when Lucy is introduced to Harry's world of wealth and status. Instead of lengthy dialogue, the film uses a series of quick vignettes, elegant dinners, charity galas, and subtle exchanges that efficiently communicate the allure of Harry's lifestyle. These montages propel the narrative forward while also reflecting Lucy's own fast-moving transition into his orbit. By contrast, montages involving John are slower and more textured. A sequence of them walking through neighborhoods, cooking at home, or sitting in silence lets the audience experience time the way Lucy does with him, unstructured, organic, and real. The difference in montage rhythm underscores the thematic divide between the curated speed of ambition and the lived slowness of love. Cross-cutting is another tool the film employs, particularly during moments of internal conflict. One memorable sequence intercuts between Lucy attending a glamorous dinner with Harry and John performing at a modest gig. The editing juxtaposes two parallel realities, not only building tension about Lucy's choices but also forcing viewers to confront the stark contrast between stability and passion. This use of cross-cutting creates a dialogue between scenes, making the audience feel Lucy's divided loyalties without the need for explicit dialogue. It also heightens suspense by delaying resolution, keeping viewers invested in how Lucy will reconcile these competing worlds. Flashbacks are used sparingly but effectively. Rather than overloading the narrative with backstory, the film drops brief, impressionistic flashes of Lucy and John's early relationship. These moments are cut into present-day scenes at points of emotional stress, like when Lucy hesitates before accepting Harry's invitation or when she sits quietly after a gala. The brevity of these flashbacks preserves narrative momentum while layering in subtext, showing how memories intrude into Lucy's present rather than unfolding in neat chronological order. The editing here emphasizes how time in the film is not strictly linear but shaped by memory, regret, and longing. Pacing across the film's 3 acts is carefully modulated. The first act establishes control and precision, the second act loosens as relationships deepen, and the third act intensifies with quicker transitions that mirror Lucy's escalating internal conflict. The climax, where Lucy must confront the weight of her choices, accelerates through tighter cuts and sharper transitions. Scenes move briskly, almost breathlessly, creating a sense of inevitability. Yet the film resists the temptation to resolve with speed alone. The final sequences slow down dramatically, with long takes and extended silences that allow the emotional weight to land fully. This contrast between rapid build-up and slow release makes the conclusion more powerful, forcing the audience to sit with unresolved emotions rather than rushing to closure. The editing also trusts silence and restraint. Unlike films that rely on rapid cutting to generate artificial energy, Materialists often lets moments breathe. A dinner scene where Lucy and John sit in silence is allowed to stretch beyond typical screen rhythm, capturing the awkwardness, yearning, and unspoken conflict between them. These restrained edits give the actors room to perform micro-expressions and subtle gestures that would be lost in a faster-paced film. The willingness to slow down at key moments reflects confidence in the story and the audience's ability to engage without constant stimulation. There are, however, points where the editing might test patience. Some of the long stretches of silence, particularly in the middle act, risk slowing the momentum too much. While these choices are thematically consistent with Lucy's struggle for authenticity, they could feel indulgent for viewers expecting a brisker narrative. In contrast, a few montages tied to Harry's lifestyle are so efficiently cut that they almost feel rushed, leaving little time to absorb the nuances of his world. These minor imbalances highlight how editing choices, while deliberate, can still affect clarity and engagement differently depending on audience expectation. Ultimately, the editing and pacing of Materialists reinforce its themes of performance versus authenticity. By alternating between rigid efficiency, loose intimacy, and sharp contrasts, the film's rhythm mirrors Lucy's shifting identity and the choices she faces. Silence becomes as powerful as dialogue, and cross-cutting deepens conflict without unnecessary explanation. The final effect is a film whose emotional peaks and quiet valleys are shaped not just by script and performance but by the editor's invisible hand guiding time itself. Far from being a passive technical layer, the editing in Materialists defines the flow of experience, ensuring that every beat, whether quick or slow, feels purposeful in telling Lucy's story. The soundtrack and score of Materialists function as more than background. They are integral to the film's emotional and thematic architecture. Music in this story is carefully woven into the fabric of Lucy's journey, not only underscoring her shifting relationships but also highlighting the divide between her curated, professional world and her vulnerable, personal one. Composer Daniel Rawson provides an original score that leans on subtle motifs and restrained instrumentation, while carefully chosen licensed tracks amplify mood in social and intimate settings. The interplay between score, soundtrack, and silence ensures that music is never ornamental but always purposeful. One of the most effective aspects of the score is the use of recurring motifs tied to character and theme. Lucy's professional life as a matchmaker is accompanied by sparse, precise piano notes layered with muted electronic textures. This minimalist theme mirrors the order and artificiality of her work environment. By contrast, John's presence introduces warmer sounds, acoustic guitar, strings, and folk-inspired melodies. These cues are not just background but auditory signals of Lucy's shifting emotional state, telling the audience when she is stepping into authenticity versus retreating into performance. The music becomes a language of its own, communicating what Lucy cannot always articulate. A standout recurring motif comes in the form of a delicate piano arpeggio associated with Lucy and John. It first appears when they reconnect, layered lightly under dialogue, almost hesitant. As their relationship deepens, the motif grows fuller, accompanied by strings that swell during moments of intimacy. By the climax, however, the motif is stripped back to its bare piano form, echoing the fragility of their connection and the uncertainty of Lucy's choices. This progression mirrors the emotional arc of the characters and ensures that the audience feels the weight of each moment beyond dialogue and action. Licensed music is used sparingly but strategically. A scene at a glamorous party with Harry is scored with an elegant piece of classical music, reflecting the sophistication and polish of his world. In sharp contrast, John's performances as a musician provide diegetic music that anchors scenes in authenticity. One especially poignant moment comes when John sings on stage in a dimly lit venue while Lucy watches from the crowd. The raw, unpolished quality of his voice against the stripped-down instrumentation highlights the honesty of his character and forces Lucy to confront what she values in her relationships. These diegetic performances feel unvarnished and real, creating a counterpoint to the curated music of Lucy's professional environment. Silence also plays a powerful role in the film's soundscape. Some of the most affecting scenes are those where the score pulls back entirely, allowing ambient sound to dominate. A dinner between Lucy and John is notable for its quietness, where the clink of cutlery and awkward pauses speak louder than music could. In another scene, Lucy walks home after a tense encounter, and the absence of score makes the city's hums and echoes feel oppressive. These choices demonstrate restraint, trusting silence to carry weight rather than relying on constant musical cues. The film also uses music to manipulate tension at key turning points. A particularly effective example occurs during a cross-cutting sequence where Lucy is with Harry at a formal event while John performs elsewhere. The score builds with layered strings and subtle percussion, weaving both worlds together musically even as the editing contrasts them visually. The swelling tension in the music mirrors Lucy's growing internal conflict, creating a sense of inevitability that dialogue alone could not capture. When the sequence resolves, the music abruptly cuts out, leaving a jarring silence that underscores the gravity of her emotional state. That said, there are moments where the score slightly overplays its hand. A few emotionally charged scenes are layered with swelling strings that verge on melodramatic, almost dictating how the audience should feel rather than letting the performances breathe. While these moments are rare, they stand out precisely because so much of the film relies on subtlety and restraint. A lighter touch in these instances might have preserved the naturalistic tone more consistently. Conversely, there are instances where music elevates scenes from effective to unforgettable. In one late sequence, Lucy rides the subway alone after a crucial decision. A gentle reprise of her piano motif plays, now slowed and fragmented, as the camera lingers on her distant expression. Without this cue, the scene might feel static, but with it, the audience feels the weight of her isolation and the unresolved conflict inside her. The music does not overwhelm but instead deepens the moment, making it linger long after the credits roll. The balance between score, soundtrack, and silence ultimately defines the soundscape of Materialists. Where many films might rely heavily on music to generate energy, this film uses it sparingly and purposefully, allowing each cue to resonate. Recurring motifs tie characters and themes together, diegetic performances inject authenticity, and moments of silence create space for tension and reflection. Even when the score leans slightly too dramatic, its overall contribution ensures that the film's emotional beats land with clarity and impact. In the end, music in Materialists is not decoration but character. It reveals Lucy's inner life, amplifies contrasts between worlds, and leaves audiences with sonic memories that echo the film's central themes of authenticity, ambition, and love. Whether through a fragile piano motif, John's unpolished songs, or the haunting use of silence, the soundtrack and score transform the film into an experience that resonates beyond the screen. Materialists is more than a romantic drama. It is a film deeply rooted in questions of authenticity, ambition, class, and the conflict between curated appearances and genuine connection. While the story follows Lucy as she navigates her relationships with John and Harry, the film's central concern is how individuals define their identities in a world where success and love often come into conflict. At its core, the film wrestles with themes of selfhood, compromise, and the search for meaning in spaces that feel both alluring and hollow. For a USA audience, these themes resonate strongly with cultural conversations around material success, emotional fulfillment, and the price of ambition. One of the clearest themes in Materialists is authenticity versus performance. Lucy's career as a high-end matchmaker embodies this tension. Her job requires her to help others craft polished versions of themselves to attract desirable partners. In doing so, Lucy herself lives within a performance, constantly navigating how others perceive her. The cinematography and editing reinforce this theme by contrasting controlled, symmetrical frames in her professional world with looser, more organic imagery when she is with John. The film's thematic question is simple but powerful. Can a person truly find love or happiness while living behind a curated facade? Through Lucy's journey, the film suggests that authenticity is fragile and difficult to maintain in a society that rewards polish over truth. Another central theme is class and power. Harry represents wealth, stability, and access to elite social circles, while John embodies artistic struggle and emotional honesty. Lucy's conflict between them is not just about romance but about what kind of life she wants to inhabit. Through parties, charity galas, and formal dinners, the film shows how wealth can create an illusion of fulfillment, yet it also highlights how that lifestyle can be alienating. Scenes where Lucy is isolated in wide shots at glamorous events communicate this idea visually, showing her disconnection even in the midst of opulence. For American audiences, this theme taps into familiar anxieties about social mobility, the cost of success, and whether financial security can ever truly substitute for emotional satisfaction. Love, in Materialists, is both a theme and a lens through which other themes are explored. The film does not portray love as a simple romantic ideal but as a site of negotiation between ambition, vulnerability, and authenticity. Lucy's relationship with John represents love rooted in shared history and genuine connection, yet it comes with instability and uncertainty. Her relationship with Harry, on the other hand, offers security but risks becoming another performance. The film does not present a clear answer about which choice is better, instead leaving the audience to wrestle with the complexity of what love means in a material-driven world. This refusal to simplify makes the theme resonate more deeply, especially for viewers grappling with similar conflicts between heart and ambition. The theme of identity is also central. Lucy begins the film defined by her role as a matchmaker and by the expectations of those around her. Throughout the story, she is forced to confront whether her identity is self-determined or shaped by external pressures. Small gestures and offhand lines reveal this struggle, such as moments when she hesitates before introducing John to others or when she downplays her own vulnerability. By the end, the film suggests that identity is not static but constantly negotiated, shaped by choices and sacrifices. This exploration of identity speaks to a broader cultural question. How much of who we are is truly ours, and how much is the product of the roles we perform for society? Materialists also engages with the theme of compromise. Lucy's dilemma is not framed as a simple choice between right and wrong but as a series of compromises, each carrying its own costs. Choosing Harry might mean sacrificing authenticity, while choosing John could mean giving up stability. The film emphasizes that life rarely offers perfect solutions. Instead, it is about navigating imperfect choices. This message is communicated not through heavy-handed dialogue but through the rhythm of editing and the progression of motifs in the score, which shift depending on Lucy's decisions. Fear underlies much of the film's conflict. Lucy fears being left behind professionally, fears emotional vulnerability, and fears making the wrong choice. This fear is most apparent in the quiet silences and long pauses in her interactions, where the absence of words communicates more than dialogue could. For a USA audience, this theme resonates with a cultural fear of missing out on success or making the wrong life decision, a tension that defines much of modern adulthood. The film does at times send mixed signals, which makes interpretation both engaging and frustrating. While it seems to critique materialism and polished surfaces, it also indulges in the allure of those worlds through glamorous cinematography and elegant design. This tension may be deliberate, forcing audiences to feel the pull of wealth and status even as they recognize its emptiness. Similarly, while John is positioned as the more authentic option, his instability is never fully resolved, leaving questions about whether authenticity alone can sustain a life together. These mixed signals enrich the film thematically, inviting audiences to wrestle with the same ambiguities that Lucy faces. In the end, Materialists communicates its themes through action and image more than exposition. The way Lucy is framed at parties, the lighting shifts between her professional and personal worlds, the motifs in the score, and the silences between characters all carry thematic weight. The film leaves viewers with a layered message. Authenticity is fragile, ambition has costs, and love is never free from compromise. For USA audiences, these ideas resonate in a culture where material success is prized but where many still long for connection and meaning beyond appearances. Rather than offering a neat resolution, Materialists invites reflection, asking its audience to confront their own compromises and the identities they perform every day. Materialists is not a film that leans heavily on visual effects or CGI in the traditional blockbuster sense. Unlike action-driven or fantasy projects that rely on spectacle, this story is rooted in grounded realism, focused on the intimate conflicts of its characters rather than elaborate visual set pieces. Still, even in a film where authenticity and subtlety dominate, visual effects play an understated but important role. They are not meant to stand out or dazzle the audience with overt displays but instead to integrate seamlessly into the storytelling, enhancing the realism of the world without distracting from it. The best way to understand the VFX work in Materialists is to think of it as invisible craftsmanship. Many scenes that seem entirely natural actually involve subtle digital enhancements. For example, the bustling city backdrops in New York are sometimes digitally altered to remove distractions or to create a specific mood. Skies are adjusted for tone, colors are enhanced to emphasize the cold sterility of Lucy's professional environment versus the warmer, more natural tones of her time with John. These enhancements are not immediately recognizable as effects, but they serve the narrative by reinforcing the thematic contrasts that run throughout the film. A standout example of subtle effects work comes in the party sequences featuring Lucy and Harry. These events are designed to showcase opulence and social polish, and visual effects help achieve the heightened aesthetic. Background crowds are digitally extended, glass reflections are cleaned or enhanced, and lighting is adjusted to create a flawless atmosphere. These enhancements allow the audience to experience the allure of Harry's world in its most curated form. The effects here are not flashy but critical in selling the illusion of perfection that the narrative later critiques. For a USA audience accustomed to blockbuster CGI, this quieter, more invisible approach to digital work may go unnoticed, but it underscores how VFX can serve character and theme rather than spectacle. The film also uses compositing in subtle ways to maintain continuity and control mood. Certain exterior shots of New York, particularly those involving Lucy walking through crowded streets or riding the subway, were digitally adjusted to control crowd density, signage, and background details. These choices keep the focus on Lucy rather than on environmental distractions. A scene where Lucy sits alone on a subway train exemplifies this. The car feels emptier than one might realistically expect, and subtle digital removal of background clutter heightens the sense of isolation. The effect is seamless, yet it amplifies the emotional weight of the scene. Practical effects are favored wherever possible, especially in John's performance sequences. His musical sets are shot with minimal interference, using real instruments and live sound. Still, digital tools were employed to polish elements, such as balancing lighting inconsistencies or adjusting acoustics for clarity. These minor enhancements ensure that the authenticity of John's world feels raw yet cinematic, without compromising its grounded nature. This blend of practical and digital work keeps the experience natural while allowing technical refinements that audiences might not consciously notice. Where CGI stands out most is in transitions between Lucy's two worlds. While there are no fantastical shifts, visual effects are used to smooth transitions, particularly in montages. For example, one sequence visually merges Lucy's professional environment with her private life by digitally blending shots across locations. A reflection of her face in a glass window at work dissolves into her watching John perform on stage. These transitions are achieved through compositing and digital blending that feel poetic rather than technical. In these moments, VFX elevates the film, adding a subtle artistry that communicates Lucy's divided identity. The restraint in visual effects also reflects a directorial choice. Materialists does not attempt to impress audiences with spectacle, which could undermine its intimacy. Instead, it uses effects to remove imperfections or create mood consistency. When Lucy is shown in elite spaces with Harry, subtle digital enhancements make every surface gleam and every shot look pristine, reinforcing the idea of a curated life. When she is with John, the visuals are deliberately less polished, sometimes leaving in rough edges or imperfections. The digital work supports this contrast rather than smoothing it away, ensuring that the audience feels the difference between two lifestyles on a visual level. In terms of technical brilliance, the most notable achievement is how invisible the effects remain. For USA audiences used to being able to spot the CGI, Materialists may surprise with how naturalistic its digital work is. There are no moments of uncanny valley, no overdone compositing, and no digital flourishes that scream for attention. Instead, the visual effects act as a quiet partner to the cinematography, color grading, and production design. Their success lies in how unnoticeable they are, blending seamlessly into the aesthetic fabric of the film. That said, there are minor moments where digital adjustments may feel slightly too controlled. In some of the gala scenes, for instance, the perfection of the lighting and the seamlessness of the crowd extensions border on artificial, reminding attentive viewers of the post-production touch. These moments, however, are rare and may even serve the thematic purpose of highlighting the artificial perfection of Harry's world. In this sense, even slightly noticeable VFX can be read as thematically intentional rather than distracting. Ultimately, the visual effects and CGI in Materialists are about support, not spectacle. They extend environments, polish imperfections, and create emotional continuity without ever intruding on the viewer's suspension of disbelief. The best effects in the film are those that go unseen, allowing audiences to focus on Lucy's choices, her relationships, and her struggle with authenticity. By favoring subtlety over spectacle, the film demonstrates how digital work can serve storytelling rather than overshadow it. For USA audiences, the lesson is clear: not all effective visual effects announce themselves with explosions or creatures. Sometimes the most impressive artistry is the kind you never notice, the kind that makes a grounded story feel effortlessly cinematic. Set design and locations in Materialists play a central role in shaping the atmosphere of the film and grounding the audience in the contrasting worlds its characters inhabit. The production design carefully balances between polished, high-society environments and modest, everyday spaces, allowing the film to visually express themes of authenticity, aspiration, and disconnection. By using a mix of real New York City locations and carefully curated sets, the film delivers an immersive and believable world that supports both the narrative and the performances. One of the strongest aspects of the set design is the sharp contrast between Lucy's professional and personal spaces. At work, Lucy is surrounded by sleek, modern interiors with clean lines and muted colors. These office spaces, often shot in glass-heavy skyscrapers, give off an air of sterility and order, reinforcing the sense that her professional life is about image, efficiency, and control. Even small details like minimalist desk setups, muted wall art, and sharp lighting choices emphasize this polished but impersonal atmosphere. These sets make it clear that Lucy is operating in a world that values appearances above all else, even at the cost of individuality. Lucy's apartment, in contrast, provides a more intimate glimpse into her private life. While not lavish, it feels carefully curated, reflecting her transitional state between two worlds. There are signs of aspiration, like tasteful decor pieces or stylish furniture, but also hints of practicality, such as worn books or a modestly sized kitchen. This balance suggests she is striving to fit into the higher circles represented by Harry, while still holding on to her more grounded reality. The production design ensures that the audience can read her internal struggle directly through the way her living space is arranged. John's world is portrayed through sets and locations that emphasize authenticity and imperfection. His apartment and rehearsal spaces are smaller, less polished, and filled with personal touches that make them feel lived in. Instruments, scattered sheet music, mismatched furniture, and slightly cluttered corners all add texture, suggesting a life driven by passion rather than image. The modest environment also reinforces John's connection to art and sincerity, in stark contrast to the sleek perfection of Harry's social sphere. Viewers can feel the warmth and authenticity of John's spaces because of these deliberate design choices. Harry's world, on the other hand, is presented with deliberate opulence. High-end penthouses, curated galleries, and luxury event spaces dominate his environment. The sets here are immaculate, almost too perfect, with polished surfaces, modern art installations, and expensive props. These settings serve as visual metaphors for the world of appearances that Harry represents. When Lucy attends social gatherings with him, the locations reinforce the allure of wealth and status. The gala scenes, in particular, are striking examples of how location and set design immerse the audience in a world that is simultaneously dazzling and artificial. Every detail, from crystal glasses to floral arrangements, contributes to the sense that Harry's environment is curated rather than lived in. New York City itself is used as a character within the film, with its streets, subways, and public spaces grounding the story in a recognizable and textured reality. Lucy walking through crowded avenues or riding the subway provides a visual reminder of her position between worlds. These real-world locations, enhanced with careful set dressing, allow the film to capture the duality of the city, a place of opportunity and ambition but also one of alienation and struggle. By alternating between gleaming high-rises and gritty side streets, the production design underscores the theme of contrast that drives Lucy's choices. Another subtle but important aspect of the production design is the way spaces change mood depending on Lucy's emotional state. A dinner with Harry in a luxury restaurant feels pristine and almost clinical, while a late-night jam session with John in a cramped apartment feels messy but alive. The design team uses lighting, props, and even the placement of actors within the space to highlight how Lucy perceives her environment at any given moment. These details ensure that the sets are not static backdrops but active participants in the storytelling. Props also carry narrative weight in Materialists. Lucy's wardrobe items, carefully placed around her apartment, tell us about her aspirations, while John's musical instruments and Harry's art collections reflect their identities. Even small objects, like coffee cups, books, or decorative accents, are chosen to enhance authenticity. These details may go unnoticed at first glance, but they create a textured environment that feels lived in and believable. What makes the set design so effective is its ability to communicate character without overt exposition. Viewers learn about Lucy, John, and Harry not only through dialogue but through the spaces they occupy. The production design aligns perfectly with the film's themes of materialism, authenticity, and self-discovery, making the environments as important to the storytelling as the characters themselves. For USA audiences, the authenticity of the locations is particularly resonant. The use of recognizable New York settings gives the story cultural specificity while also highlighting universal struggles. The smart combination of real-world locations and curated sets ensures that Materialists never feels artificial, even when depicting the artificiality of high society life. In the end, the set design and locations in Materialists succeed in creating a believable, textured world that mirrors the characters' emotional journeys. From the cramped apartments full of personality to the sweeping penthouses that project wealth and status, every environment is carefully designed to support mood, character, and theme. The result is a production design that feels invisible when it needs to be and striking when it must underline the contrast at the heart of the story. The dialogue and script in Materialists form the backbone of how the film communicates its ideas, character dynamics, and central conflicts. While visuals, music, and performance all play a role, the script ultimately provides the scaffolding for the narrative and sets the tone for how audiences connect with the story. In this film, the writing aims for a balance between realism and heightened drama, often threading subtext through exchanges that initially appear simple. This creates layers for the audience to unpack, though at times the script risks leaning too heavily on exposition. Still, the dialogue often succeeds in capturing the competing desires of the characters and in articulating the themes of authenticity versus superficiality that run through the narrative. One of the most notable strengths of the script lies in its ability to capture everyday speech without making it sound dull. Characters rarely talk in perfect sentences, and the film embraces this naturalistic rhythm, with pauses, interruptions, and small shifts in tone that give conversations life. For example, Lucy's early exchanges with John are marked by hesitation and half-formed sentences, reflecting both her vulnerability and her desire to be truly understood. The awkward silences in their dialogue speak volumes, often communicating more than any direct statement could. By contrast, her conversations with Harry are smooth, polished, and rehearsed, mimicking the kind of performance expected in high society. This deliberate distinction in speech patterns becomes a subtle but powerful way of highlighting Lucy's divided world. Subtext is another area where the script shines. Many of the best lines in Materialists are not about what is said but about what is implied. When Lucy deflects a question with humor or when Harry compliments her in a way that feels more about himself than her, the audience can sense the deeper tensions at play. These moments allow viewers to engage actively, piecing together the emotional undercurrents rather than being handed the truth outright. It is this reliance on subtext that gives the dialogue an emotional weight and makes certain scenes linger long after they have ended. At the same time, the script is unafraid of silence. In fact, some of the most powerful exchanges are defined by what is left unsaid. A scene in which Lucy stares at John after a difficult conversation carries more meaning than an entire page of dialogue could. The willingness of the script to let silence hold space respects the audience's intelligence and creates an intimacy that resonates deeply. Silence becomes a narrative tool, giving both the characters and the viewers a chance to reflect on what has been revealed and what remains unresolved. That said, the script is not flawless. There are moments when it slips into exposition, with characters saying things that feel designed more for the audience's benefit than for natural conversation. This occurs most often in Lucy's professional world, where discussions about her work sometimes veer into clumsy explanations of themes the film has already conveyed visually. These stretches can feel like padding, slowing the rhythm and undercutting the otherwise sharp and layered voice of the script. For USA audiences accustomed to streamlined dialogue in contemporary dramas, these moments may stand out as less effective. On the other hand, when the script is operating at its best, it turns conversations into engines of both character and plot. The first dinner scene between Lucy and Harry is a prime example. Their dialogue reveals not only the attraction and tension between them but also sets up the thematic contrast of image versus substance. Similarly, the exchanges between Lucy and John during their creative moments are not just about building their relationship, but also about reinforcing the central theme of art as authenticity. These conversations are efficient in that they serve multiple purposes, moving the story forward while deepening our understanding of who these people are. The film also sprinkles in dialogue that resonates beyond the moment, lines that reflect larger thematic concerns. A simple remark from John about how people pretend to hear music but never really listen echoes the film's broader exploration of authenticity and attention. These lines carry a poetic weight, leaving the audience with a sense that the script has been carefully constructed to layer meaning throughout. At its strongest, the dialogue avoids the obvious and instead gives voice to universal questions through character-specific language. Relationships are particularly well served by the dialogue. Lucy's dynamic with Harry is expressed in carefully constructed banter and polished remarks, while her connection with John grows through shared vulnerability and unfinished thoughts. The contrast in these conversations allows the audience to feel the tension in Lucy's choices without the film needing to spell it out. The script also uses repetition of certain phrases to underscore how Lucy's words change meaning depending on context, revealing growth or regression in her character. In terms of areas for improvement, a few side characters suffer from underwritten dialogue. Their lines sometimes exist more to serve Lucy's arc than to express their own interiority, making them feel like placeholders rather than fully realized people. While not a major flaw, it does highlight where a rewrite could have tightened emotional clarity and expanded the richness of the ensemble. Overall, the dialogue and script of Materialists succeed in creating a layered and emotionally resonant experience. The writing is at its best when it leans into subtext, silence, and naturalistic rhythm, trusting the audience to fill in the gaps. It falters slightly when it leans on exposition, but these moments are outweighed by the strength of its character-driven conversations and thematic resonance. For USA audiences, the script feels contemporary, relatable, and reflective of real tensions, while also offering poetic flourishes that elevate it beyond surface realism. The result is a screenplay that not only drives the narrative, but also deepens the emotional and thematic core of the film. Materialists positions itself most firmly in the realm of drama, though it borrows stylistic touches from romance and social satire to round out its identity. To evaluate its genre execution, it is important to first recognize what audiences expect from drama as a category. Layered characters, emotionally resonant stakes, conflicts that are deeply personal yet reflect larger societal issues, and a story that relies on psychological tension more than spectacle. By these standards, Materialists delivers a strong performance, though not without moments where it leans into familiar tropes that could divide viewers. The film honors many of drama's core expectations. From its very first act, Materialists establishes itself as a character-driven narrative rather than a plot-driven one. Audiences looking for car chases, explosive confrontations, or horror-style jump scares will not find them here. Instead, what anchors the film are the emotional complexities of Lucy, Harry, and John, and the way their desires and insecurities collide. This approach is very much in line with what fans of modern dramas anticipate: internal conflicts expressed through relationships, subtle shifts in dialogue, and emotional revelations that feel earned rather than forced. The focus is less on external events and more on what those events reveal about human nature. At the same time, the film makes calculated use of romance elements to heighten emotional stakes. Romantic drama is a well-established subgenre, and Materialists respects its conventions while offering small innovations. The love triangle between Lucy, Harry, and John risks feeling familiar at first glance, but the script avoids the cliché of painting one man as entirely good and the other as irredeemably bad. Instead, both relationships are textured, reflecting different aspects of Lucy's identity. For USA audiences who may be familiar with romantic dramas that fall into predictable binaries, this approach feels refreshing, lending a degree of authenticity to the relationships. The emotional beats of longing, betrayal, and intimacy are present, but they are staged with enough nuance to avoid melodrama. Another area where Materialists engages with genre expectations is in its use of satire. While not a comedy, the film sprinkles in sharp observations about wealth, status, and performance in elite social circles. These moments play almost like social commentary dramas such as The Great Gatsby or more recent films like Triangle of Sadness, though with a quieter, less overtly comedic tone. This hybrid quality gives Materialists a layered genre identity. It is not strictly a romance, nor purely a social critique, but a drama that pulls from multiple traditions to expand its scope. Audiences expecting a straightforward romantic drama might find these satirical asides unexpected, but for others they may provide a fresh perspective on familiar territory. Where the film leans on tropes, it sometimes falters. The struggling artist character of John, for instance, fits a long tradition of cinema's fascination with the tortured creative. While the film invests enough detail to make him feel specific, the broad strokes of his role, contrasting sincerity and passion against Harry's wealth and status, do run the risk of predictability. Similarly, the theme of choosing between love and security has been played out countless times in dramas. What saves Materialists from feeling formulaic is its refusal to provide easy answers. The film never frames Lucy's choice as clear-cut, and it resists the temptation to reduce her journey to a simple moral lesson. In terms of pacing and tone, the film aligns well with what USA audiences expect from prestige dramas. The deliberate pacing, emphasis on silence, and focus on emotional nuance are consistent with the genre's high standards. However, this same commitment could alienate viewers more accustomed to faster-moving narratives. The film's refusal to rely on heightened melodrama means that certain beats, such as a confrontation between Lucy and Harry over his manipulation, play out with restraint rather than explosive theatrics. This can be seen as a strength for those who value subtlety, though it risks leaving others unsatisfied. Materialists also makes interesting choices in its treatment of climax and resolution, areas where many dramas either over-deliver or undercut their genre identity. Instead of a neatly tied-up ending, the film concludes with ambiguity, allowing Lucy's future to remain unresolved. This aligns with a modern trend in dramas toward open-ended conclusions that reflect real life's uncertainties. For audiences accustomed to closure in mainstream cinema, this choice may feel frustrating, but for others it elevates the film's thematic richness and positions it alongside respected character-driven works. Perhaps the most notable way Materialists refreshes its genre is in its treatment of its protagonist. While many dramas center on redemption arcs or moral reckonings, Lucy's journey is less about resolution and more about self-recognition. The film acknowledges her flaws without forcing her into an artificial transformation. In doing so, it resists the genre's common urge to deliver either total downfall or total salvation. This refusal to simplify character development is both a strength and a challenge. It honors drama's complexity but could alienate audiences seeking a more traditional narrative payoff. In sum, Materialists executes its genre identity with confidence. It honors the conventions of drama by foregrounding character, emotion, and societal critique, while weaving in romance and satirical elements to expand its range. It avoids melodrama, embraces subtlety, and delivers emotional beats with restraint rather than spectacle. Where it leans on familiar tropes, it offsets them with nuance, and where it risks alienating audiences with ambiguity, it rewards those willing to engage more deeply. For USA audiences, the film feels both recognizable within the tradition of contemporary drama and inventive enough to stand apart. Its genre execution reflects a respect for what the form demands while also challenging its boundaries, making Materialists a compelling if at times demanding viewing experience. Materialists is more than a character-driven drama about relationships and choices. It is also a film that subtly but consistently comments on social and cultural dynamics in the modern world. At its core, the story is about authenticity versus performance, and while this plays out most directly in Lucy's personal relationships, it also reflects broader conversations about wealth, privilege, gender roles, and class distinctions. For USA audiences, the film feels particularly relevant because it speaks to tensions that resonate in contemporary society, where questions of identity, power, and material success often shape both public and private lives. The most immediate layer of commentary in Materialists is about wealth and status. Harry embodies the allure of material success, privilege, and influence, while John represents sincerity, creativity, and the struggles of working outside established power structures. This contrast between the wealthy elite and the struggling artist is a familiar cinematic theme, but the film treats it with care, avoiding simple moral binaries. Rather than framing Harry as entirely corrupt or John as inherently noble, the film highlights how both men occupy worlds defined by external pressures and internal contradictions. The social commentary emerges in how Lucy navigates between these two spheres, embodying the struggles of many individuals caught between ambition and authenticity. Class divides also receive subtle treatment through set design, dialogue, and character interactions. The polished environments of Harry's world, lavish dinners, carefully curated public appearances, and conversations steeped in performance, contrast sharply with the intimate, often messy spaces where Lucy and John connect. These settings are not just backdrops but active reflections of the cultural and social hierarchies the film critiques. By highlighting how physical spaces reinforce privilege, the film draws attention to how inequality shapes not only material conditions but also emotional possibilities. For USA viewers, accustomed to similar contrasts in their own society, this aspect of the film underscores its resonance. Gender roles form another significant thread in the film's social commentary. Lucy is not presented as a passive character caught between two men. Rather, she is portrayed as an active agent grappling with societal expectations placed upon women in professional and personal contexts. Her relationship with Harry is steeped in power dynamics, not only because of his wealth but also because of cultural expectations about partnership and success. Her connection with John, while more emotionally sincere, also brings its own challenges, as it positions her against the traditional model of security and status. The film avoids presenting Lucy as a victim, instead exploring the subtle negotiations women must undertake when navigating relationships in male-dominated spheres. In doing so, it resonates with broader conversations in USA culture about agency, independence, and the tension between professional identity and personal fulfillment. The film also touches on cultural performance and the idea of authenticity in a social media-driven world. Harry's polished persona and his fixation on appearances reflect the way society often rewards surface over substance. Lucy's struggle, then, is not just about choosing between two men but about deciding what kind of life she wants to lead in a culture that prizes performance. This theme feels particularly timely for American audiences, where curated public images dominate everything from politics to personal branding. The film suggests that authenticity is increasingly difficult to preserve in a world that values appearances, raising questions that extend far beyond the characters themselves. Another subtle but important layer of commentary involves art and its place in society. John's creative pursuits highlight the vulnerability of artists in a system that often undervalues their contributions. His struggle to find recognition mirrors broader cultural debates about the importance of art in an economy dominated by profit and spectacle. For USA audiences, this aspect of the story may strike a chord given ongoing conversations about the precarious position of artists, writers, and performers in an era of streaming platforms, shrinking budgets, and shifting cultural priorities. That said, the film is not without its risks. While it raises questions about wealth, gender, and authenticity, it sometimes simplifies these issues by filtering them entirely through Lucy's personal story. By keeping the focus so tightly on the love triangle, it occasionally misses the chance to broaden its critique of systemic inequality. For example, Harry's privilege is presented largely in terms of his ability to provide material comfort, rather than exploring more deeply how his power impacts those outside his immediate circle. This narrow focus makes the commentary more personal than political, which may feel like an oversight to viewers looking for a deeper critique of systemic structures. Tone also plays a role in how the film's social and cultural messages are received. For the most part, Materialists approaches its commentary with sensitivity, relying on subtle cues rather than heavy-handed statements. However, there are moments, particularly in scenes of elite gatherings, where the satire edges toward caricature. While these moments are entertaining, they risk undermining the otherwise nuanced critique by making wealthy characters feel exaggerated rather than realistic. For some USA audiences, this will enhance the film's humor and clarity, but for others it may come across as too on the nose. Ultimately, Materialist succeeds in using personal drama to reflect larger societal concerns. Its social and cultural commentary emerges not through overt speeches but through the interplay of relationships, environments, and unspoken tensions. The film opens important questions about class, gender, authenticity, and the value of art, while leaving room for viewers to interpret and debate its meanings. Where it occasionally oversimplifies, it does so in service of maintaining narrative focus, and where it risks caricature, it compensates with emotional authenticity. For USA audiences, the result is a film that feels timely, reflective, and culturally aware, even as it avoids becoming a purely political statement. Its commentary deepens the story without overwhelming it, ensuring that viewers walk away not only reflecting on the characters but also on the world around them. Audience engagement is one of the strongest measures of how well a film resonates, and Materialists is carefully constructed to spark not just immediate emotional reactions but also lasting discussion. It is not a film built on shock twists or spectacle, but it understands the power of quiet revelations, charged dialogue, and the kind of moments that stick with viewers long after the credits roll. For USA audiences, who value both emotionally resonant storytelling and scenes that can translate into cultural conversation, Materialists offers a variety of beats designed to provoke gasps, tears, laughter, and debate. One of the earliest scenes that grabs attention comes during Lucy's first extended dinner with Harry's circle of wealthy friends. The scene is filled with subtext, with Lucy caught between the polished wit of the elite and her own discomfort. The tension builds until Harry makes an offhand comment about her background, delivered with charm but undercut by a sharp edge. This moment almost guarantees a collective gasp from viewers, not only because of the personal sting but also because it crystallizes the class divide at the heart of the story. It is a scene built for discussion, with audiences likely debating whether Harry's remark was cruel, careless, or simply revealing of deeper truths. Laughter, though not the film's primary aim, is still carefully woven into the script. Small beats of humor come mostly from Lucy's interactions with John, whose awkward honesty and dry observations provide moments of relief. One memorable exchange about the absurdity of networking in creative industries lands as both funny and cutting, offering USA audiences a moment of recognition that feels both personal and culturally relevant. These humorous beats, though subtle, prevent the story from becoming overly heavy and give viewers emotional breathing room. Tears are almost certain to come during the film's quieter, more intimate moments. A standout is a scene where Lucy and John share a piece of music late at night. The combination of restrained dialogue, emotional vulnerability, and the score's understated accompaniment makes this a signature tear-inducing sequence. Rather than relying on melodrama, the film taps into something universal, the yearning to be truly seen and understood. Many USA viewers will connect with this moment deeply, and it is likely to become one of the most discussed emotional highlights of the film. Debate is another form of engagement the film actively encourages, and it emerges most strongly in the finale. Materialists does not provide a neat resolution, leaving Lucy's future uncertain. This deliberate ambiguity ensures that audiences walk out with questions rather than closure. Did she make the right choice? Was either man truly the right path for her? Or was the point that she needed to reject both versions of herself to move forward independently? For USA audiences, who are used to both open-ended prestige dramas and tightly wrapped mainstream films, this ending will divide opinion. Some will find it powerful and thought-provoking, while others may view it as unsatisfying. Either way, it guarantees post-screening discussion. Certain moments also stand out as signature hooks designed for repeat viewing. The first time Lucy steps into Harry's glamorous social world is shot and staged with such precision that viewers are likely to revisit the scene to catch subtle details in the background. The glances, the decor, the way characters maneuver around one another. Similarly, the music-sharing scene with John rewards careful rewatching because of its layered performances and emotional subtext. These moments are crafted to feel different depending on what the viewer knows at the time, enhancing the film's rewatchability. Materialists also include sequences that are almost certain to generate cultural afterlife in the form of quotes, gifs, or memes. Harry's offhand but stinging line about Lucy's background, for example, is perfectly poised to become a screenshot shared across social platforms as shorthand for class-based dismissal. Lucy's silent stare in the final act, an expression filled with emotion but withholding any explanation, is another moment likely to circulate widely, encapsulating the film's themes of ambiguity and unresolved tension. For USA audiences, who often engage with films through digital culture, these beats help extend the film's presence beyond the theater. Rewatchability is enhanced by the script's layered dialogue and the director's attention to subtext. Many scenes contain double meanings that only become clear on a second or third viewing. For example, Lucy's casual remark about playing along early in the film seems innocuous at first, but after the ending it takes on new weight as a reflection of her entire journey. This layering encourages repeat viewings, rewarding audiences who look closely for connections between early dialogue and later revelations. Another aspect that drives engagement is the relatability of its themes. Audiences are likely to project their own experiences onto Lucy's journey, debating not only what she should have chosen but also what they themselves might do in her place. This makes the film ideal for group discussions, whether among friends leaving the theater or in online forums where interpretations and theories are exchanged. The balance of universal emotions and culturally specific critiques gives the film longevity in audience conversation. In sum, Materialists engages its audience on multiple levels. It creates gasp-worthy moments through sharp dialogue, delivers humor through understated observations, and offers scenes of emotional vulnerability that move viewers to tears. Its open-ended finale ensures lasting debate, while carefully crafted sequences encourage rewatching and reward attention to detail. Signature lines and gestures are poised to enter digital culture, extending the film's life in conversation and memory. For USA audiences, the film provides not only a rich viewing experience but also an opportunity to reflect, argue, and connect over the themes and choices it presents. This combination of emotional hooks, cultural resonance, and narrative ambiguity ensures that Materialists is not just watched but engaged with long after the screen goes dark. Comparisons are one of the most effective ways to understand how a film positions itself within the cinematic landscape, and Materialists almost seems to invite these parallels. By nature of its themes, tone, and structure, it sits at the crossroads of romantic drama, social satire, and character study, a combination that connects it to both contemporary and classic works. Setting it next to films in the same genre and considering the echoes of its director's past work highlights both its strengths and its areas where it struggles to match the ambition of its influences. For USA audiences especially, who often approach films with reference points in mind, these comparisons help clarify where Materialists stands in the broader conversation. The most immediate comparison many viewers will draw is to Woody Allen's work, particularly films like Matchpoint or even Annie Hall in their exploration of class, ambition, and romance. Like Allen's films, Materialists thrives on sharp dialogue and carefully observed social dynamics. Both lean into conversations as battlegrounds where charm, wit, and cruelty intermingle. Yet while Matchpoint reveled in its noirish fatalism, Materialists opts for more ambiguity, less concerned with delivering a shocking conclusion and more focused on leaving the viewer with unresolved emotional tension. This difference marks a strength for audiences who prefer subtlety over melodrama, though some may feel it lacks the decisive punch of its predecessors. Another touchstone is the work of Noah Baumbach, especially films like Marriage Story or Frances Ha. Materialists shares Baumbach's gift for sharp, layered conversations that reveal both vulnerability and cruelty in the same breath. The character of Lucy, in particular, has shades of Frances, torn between self-expression and societal pressure, caught in relationships that both define and limit her. However, where Baumbach's films often root themselves in a raw, intimate realism, Materialists leans toward heightened scenarios, especially in its depiction of New York's elite. This gives it a more theatrical quality, one that some audiences may find stylish while others may see as distancing compared to Baumbach's grounded naturalism. There are also connections to more recent social satires like Triangle of Sadness or The Menu, both of which skewer the excesses of wealth and the absurdities of privilege. Materialists is less overtly satirical than those films, opting for quiet character-driven critiques rather than sharp, biting commentary. Still, the dinner scenes in Materialists echo the tension and discomfort of The Menu, with the act of eating and social performance becoming stand-ins for power dynamics. By comparison, Materialists feels more restrained, which can be both a strength, avoiding heavy-handedness, and a weakness for viewers who prefer the bold provocation of modern satire. On the romantic drama side, the film recalls the work of Richard Linklater, particularly the Before trilogy. The extended conversations between Lucy and John often resemble the intimate, time-suspended exchanges between Jesse and Celine, where the true drama is in what is said, what is left unsaid, and how two people's vulnerabilities intersect. Yet Linklater's films thrived on an almost utopian romanticism, while Materialists offers a more cynical or at least pragmatic view of relationships. It asks whether love can survive in the shadow of ambition and social pressure, making it a darker and more unsettling counterpart to the earnestness of Linklater's work. The film also bears resemblance to classics of romantic melodrama like The Great Gatsby, particularly in its portrayal of wealth, desire, and the tension between personal authenticity and social aspiration. Lucy's entry into Harry's glittering world mirrors Gatsby's pursuit of Daisy and his immersion into high society. Like Fitzgerald's tale, Materialists frames wealth as both intoxicating and destructive. However, instead of offering a tragic collapse, it ends with ambiguity, allowing Lucy's fate to remain unresolved. In this way, it updates the Gatsby template for modern audiences by rejecting neat conclusions and focusing on uncertainty. When placed alongside the director's previous work, Materialists shows both growth and continuity. If earlier projects leaned heavily on stylized dialogue and carefully staged interpersonal dynamics, this film feels more refined in its pacing and more subtle in its emotional beats. Yet the reliance on extended conversations as central set pieces can also feel repetitive, echoing the director's earlier strengths but occasionally bordering on self-indulgence. Compared to past efforts, it demonstrates greater confidence in leaving things unsaid, though it sometimes struggles to balance narrative momentum with thematic exploration. In terms of weaknesses revealed through comparison, Materialists occasionally falls short of the emotional intensity achieved by its peers. Where Baumbach or Allen can build conversations to devastating crescendos, Materialists sometimes lets them fizzle, leaving a sense of incompleteness. Similarly, when set against bold social satires, it can feel cautious, unwilling to fully commit to biting critique. This restraint may appeal to some audiences who value nuance, but it risks alienating those who want sharper edges in a story about class and privilege. Ultimately, what Materialists borrows smartly is the use of dialogue as both engine and mirror, the framing of romance within larger social structures, and the use of elite spaces as battlegrounds for identity and authenticity. Where it reinvents the formula is in its refusal to deliver easy answers, instead leaning into ambiguity as its signature. And where it falls short is in the occasional lack of narrative escalation, which makes it feel less impactful than some of its most obvious predecessors. For USA audiences, these comparisons help locate Materialists within a familiar tradition of dialogue-driven dramas and social critiques. While it may not surpass its influences in sheer ambition or execution, it carves out its own space through a combination of restraint, ambiguity, and emotional nuance. It does not attempt to outdo its predecessors in spectacle, but rather positions itself as a quieter, more introspective contribution to the ongoing cinematic conversation about love, wealth, and identity. Symbolism and metaphor are central to how Materialists communicates ideas beyond the surface level of its story. While the plot focuses on the relationships between Lucy, John, and Harry, the film constantly embeds visual and narrative cues that expand the drama into a broader meditation on love, ambition, and social hierarchy. These choices are rarely accidental. Instead, they work as echoes, recurring patterns that add weight to the story and give the audience an opportunity to interpret meaning in ways that dialogue alone never could. For USA audiences, accustomed to dissecting films for hidden messages, Materialists offers a rich text of subtle imagery that rewards careful viewing. One of the clearest metaphors in the film is the repeated image of glass. Characters are often seen through windows, mirrors, or drinking glasses, and the framing suggests both transparency and fragility. Lucy, in particular, is frequently positioned behind glass panes, as though her identity and autonomy are always on display, yet also separated from the freedom she seeks. The director uses reflections to underline her fractured sense of self, suggesting that she is never fully in control of her narrative, but rather caught between the images others project onto her. Glass becomes a motif for the illusion of openness, when in fact what we see is only a surface reflection of deeper struggles. Wealth itself is treated as both symbol and setting, functioning as more than just a backdrop for the drama. Harry's luxurious apartment and the elite spaces of New York are shot with a cold, almost museum-like precision, turning material possessions into symbols of emptiness. The lavish furniture and spotless interiors convey the comfort of privilege, but their sterility also mirrors the hollow emotional lives of those who occupy them. In contrast, John's modest home and work environment are filled with imperfections, clutter, and warmth, suggesting authenticity and struggle rather than curated presentation. The film sets up a visual metaphor where wealth represents control and confinement, while scarcity allows for freedom and messiness, even if it comes with insecurity. Food and dining scenes also carry symbolic weight. Meals in Materialists are less about nourishment and more about performance. Characters use them as stages to assert dominance, charm, or indifference. For example, Lucy's unease during her first high society dinner with Harry highlights her status as an outsider trying to perform belonging. The table becomes a metaphor for class negotiation, where every bite, every glance, and every silence communicates power dynamics. In contrast, meals with John are informal, imperfect, and intimate, symbolizing connection rather than performance. These contrasts help the audience understand Lucy's internal conflict, torn between the seductive stability of Harry's world and the unpredictable honesty of John's. Colors play a consistent symbolic role throughout the film. Warm earth tones often accompany John's presence, suggesting grounding, humanity, and the pull of a more authentic life. In Harry's world, cooler palettes dominate, with whites, silvers, and muted blues projecting sophistication but also sterility. Lucy herself is often dressed in shifting tones depending on her situation. With Harry, she tends to wear restrained, elegant outfits that blend into his environment, suggesting conformity. With John, her clothing choices are looser, more casual, and more expressive, symbolizing her fluctuating sense of freedom. These color dynamics subtly reinforce the tension between appearance and authenticity, external stability and inner chaos. Recurring objects further deepen the film's metaphorical language. A recurring bracelet Lucy wears serves as a symbol of her attempt to hold on to stability while moving between two worlds. At one point, she removes it before confronting John, signaling her readiness to be vulnerable. Later, she deliberately leaves it behind in Harry's apartment, an act that feels like surrender to his control. Small details like this give the audience a sense of progression even when the dialogue keeps things ambiguous. Similarly, recurring shots of subway trains moving underground symbolize Lucy's constant state of transition, caught between destinations, never fully arriving at one clear identity. Another powerful metaphor is the use of silence. In several key scenes, music and dialogue drop away, leaving only ambient noise or nothing at all. These silences serve as a symbolic void, moments where characters are forced to confront their own truths without the distraction of words or sound. For Lucy, these pauses feel like emotional mirrors, moments where she cannot hide behind charm or performance. Silence becomes a recurring metaphor for authenticity, even if it is uncomfortable and fleeting. The film also plays with the metaphor of performance. Several scenes suggest that relationships themselves are staged acts, where characters take on roles depending on who they are with. Lucy shifts between witty, charming partner with Harry and vulnerable, searching companion with John. The repeated staging of conversations as if they were theatrical duels reinforces the sense that the characters are not just living their lives but performing them for one another. This theatrical metaphor connects to the larger theme of materialism itself, where life becomes about appearances and presentation rather than inner truth. What makes the symbolism in Materialists effective is that it is rarely overstated. Glass, wealth, food, color, objects, and silence are woven seamlessly into the storytelling, enriching the drama without announcing themselves too loudly. At times, the ambiguity of these metaphors may frustrate viewers who prefer clearer resolutions, but for those willing to look closely, they reveal an intricate web of meaning. For USA audiences, this symbolic layering adds to the film's rewatchability. Scenes that might feel straightforward at first take on new dimensions once these motifs are recognized. A dinner scene is no longer just a dinner, it becomes a ritual of class performance. A mirror is not just a mirror, it reflects the fragmentation of identity. Through these choices, Materialists demonstrates how symbolism and metaphor elevate a story, transforming personal drama into a layered reflection on love, ambition, and the masks people wear in pursuit of belonging. When discussing Materialists in terms of franchise or historical context, the film stands as an independent narrative, not tied to an extended cinematic universe or a historical biography. This independence is both its strength and its challenge. In a media landscape dominated by sequels, prequels, and shared universes, a standalone film often has to work harder to establish its identity and justify its cultural space. Materialists enters this environment not as part of a series but as a self-contained story, one that does not rely on built-in fan bases or extended lore. For USA audiences, this makes it a refreshing change of pace, inviting viewers to engage with it on its own terms rather than as another piece in a larger franchise puzzle. Still, examining the film within a broader cinematic and historical context helps position it more clearly. Thematically, Materialists joins a long line of films that interrogate ambition, class, and love through the lens of personal relationships. Comparisons can be drawn to American classics like The Great Gatsby, where wealth and desire collide in ways that reveal the emptiness behind glamour. Like Gatsby, Materialists uses settings of privilege and material excess not to celebrate them but to expose their fragility. In this sense, the film resonates with USA audiences familiar with stories that critique the American dream and the seductive but hollow nature of wealth. Historically, the cultural backdrop against which Materialists was released is important. The film emerged in a period marked by widening conversations about inequality, materialism, and the pressures of consumer-driven identities. In the USA, these discussions are particularly charged, shaped by debates about class mobility, economic precarity, and the tension between authentic living and the performance of success. By weaving a love triangle into this environment, the film dramatizes personal dilemmas that echo broader social concerns. Lucy's choices between John and Harry can be read not only as romantic decisions but as symbolic negotiations between authenticity and material stability, themes that resonate strongly with contemporary American cultural anxieties. The film also situates itself within the evolution of independent cinema. While big-budget franchises often rely on spectacle and recognizable intellectual property, Materialists takes a more restrained, character-driven approach. This aligns it with a tradition of independent American dramas that prioritize nuanced storytelling and layered character arcs over formulaic genre beats. For audiences in the USA, particularly those who seek alternatives to blockbuster fare, Materialists functions as part of a recognizable lineage of films that challenge mainstream cinematic norms while still engaging with universal themes of love, power, and self-discovery. In terms of cinematic history, the movie carries stylistic echoes of European art films, particularly in its pacing, use of silence, and willingness to leave certain narrative threads unresolved. This choice places it within a global conversation about how stories are told, but its distinctly urban American setting anchors it in the realities of contemporary New York life. The blending of international style with USA-based content creates a hybrid identity for the film, appealing to both festival audiences and everyday viewers who may recognize aspects of their own lives in its social commentary. Though Materialists is not part of a franchise, one could argue that it contains soft franchise elements through its intertextuality. The film alludes to cinematic predecessors in subtle ways: mirrored compositions reminiscent of Woody Allen's Manhattan, the emotional claustrophobia of Ingmar Bergman's relationship dramas, and the social critique of films like American Psycho. These references are not explicit Easter eggs in the franchise sense but work instead as cinematic callbacks, rewarding viewers who are familiar with the history of films that dissect class and love. For the USA audience, such intertextual moments position Materialists as a work that is both aware of its cinematic heritage and intent on carving out its own space within it. What makes the historical context even more interesting is the way the film dramatizes issues relevant to its time without being tied to one specific event. It does not market itself as a true story or based on real events, yet its realism and attention to social texture make it feel deeply of its moment. The economic anxieties, the aspirational undertones, and the relationship dynamics all reflect lived realities of the mid-2020s. When USA audiences watch it, they may see their own cultural landscape refracted through Lucy's dilemma, recognizing not just individual drama but a symbolic rendering of larger societal pressures. The absence of franchise elements also means Materialists must live and die on its storytelling merits. Unlike a Marvel or DC property, it cannot rely on fan loyalty or extended mythology. This raises the stakes for the film, forcing it to achieve cultural relevance through its performances, themes, and execution alone. That it succeeds in sparking conversation suggests that independence remains a viable strategy in a crowded marketplace, especially when audiences are eager for original stories that are not bound by pre-existing intellectual property. Ultimately, Materialists is not part of a continuing saga nor a historical dramatization. Instead, it is a singular film that gains its context by drawing on themes, visual traditions, and cultural anxieties that USA audiences recognize from both cinematic history and lived experience. Its refusal to situate itself in a franchise framework is a conscious statement, one that insists on being judged as a complete work rather than a chapter in a larger narrative. At the same time, its historical resonance, emerging during a period of sharp cultural reflection on wealth, love, and identity, cements its place as a film that feels both timely and enduring. In this way, Materialists situates itself within the broader conversation of cinema while remaining uniquely its own. When examining the budget and box office performance of Materialists, it becomes clear how production costs and financial strategy play a role in shaping both perception and success. The film does not present itself as a massive tentpole release, nor does it aim to compete with blockbuster franchises built on high levels of spectacle. Instead, it positions itself as a mid-budget drama with strong emphasis on performance, atmosphere, and thematic weight. For USA audiences, accustomed to seeing major studios sink hundreds of millions into superhero or franchise titles, Materialists represents a more modest but calculated investment, one that banks on storytelling and acting over visual excess. Reports place the production budget in a range that suggests careful but deliberate spending, somewhere between the upper levels of independent film and the lower tier of studio financing. This budget is not extravagant by Hollywood standards, but what makes Materialists impressive is how much of that investment is visible on screen. The cinematography, set design, and carefully selected New York locations create an atmosphere that feels far more expensive than the raw numbers might suggest. Clever use of real-world locations in place of elaborate soundstage builds allowed the filmmakers to save costs while maintaining authenticity, and the lighting design helped elevate everyday spaces into cinematic images. This efficient spending makes the film appear richer than its budget would indicate, a trait USA critics often admire in films that prioritize artistry over financial bloat. Marketing strategy played a significant role in shaping audience awareness. Rather than a wide initial release that demands heavy spending on advertising, Materialists benefited from a festival circuit rollout designed to build buzz. Strong word of mouth from early screenings allowed it to enter the USA market with a reputation for being thought-provoking and sophisticated, which helped draw audiences who seek character-driven drama. This approach was less costly than traditional blockbuster campaigns, which rely on saturation marketing across TV, social media, and outdoor advertising. Instead, Materialists targeted its audience more precisely, appealing to art house circles and streaming-savvy viewers who track festival hits. Box office performance reflected this strategy. Opening weekend numbers were modest compared to franchise-driven films, but they were entirely in line with expectations for a mid-budget character drama. What set Materialists apart was its staying power. Instead of dropping off sharply after the first weekend, as many films do, it maintained a consistent performance over several weeks. This was helped by strong reviews, high audience scores, and a steady stream of social media discussion that kept the film visible. In the USA, where word of mouth can make or break mid-tier films, Materialists thrived on its reputation for intelligent storytelling and layered performances. The international market also contributed to its success. Themes of materialism, class struggle, and love are universal, which allowed the film to resonate beyond the USA audience. European markets in particular responded well, and certain Asian territories with growing interest in independent and character-driven films also added to its box office totals. This international appeal helped balance out the film's lack of blockbuster-style domestic numbers, making it financially viable on a global scale. Another important factor in financial success is streaming potential. While theatrical box office provides immediate numbers, USA studios and distributors increasingly view streaming rights as crucial revenue streams. Materialists, with its strong critical reception and buzz, positioned itself well for post-theatrical distribution. Premium video on-demand sales, streaming licensing deals, and eventual inclusion in subscription services extended the film's profitability. For many USA audiences who discover the film later at home, the streaming release ensured continued cultural conversation, which can indirectly boost a film's reputation and long-term financial impact. When analyzing the film's budget-to-return ratio, it becomes evident that Materialists punched above its weight. While it did not earn blockbuster numbers, its relatively restrained budget meant that profitability was easier to achieve. This contrasts with franchise titles that may gross hundreds of millions but require equally massive spending, leaving smaller profit margins. Materialists exemplifies how careful financial planning, efficient use of resources, and a targeted release strategy can allow a mid-budget drama to succeed without the safety net of brand recognition or spectacle. It is also worth noting how the film's subject matter contributed to its commercial performance. USA audiences are often divided on slower, character-driven dramas, but Materialists managed to attract both critics and mainstream viewers by balancing accessible romance with deeper social commentary. This dual appeal gave it stronger legs at the box office compared to films that cater exclusively to niche audiences. By embedding universal themes into a grounded, stylish presentation, the film maintained cultural relevance beyond its theatrical run. In the final analysis, Materialists demonstrates how financial strategy can be as important as artistic ambition. Its budget was carefully allocated to maximize on-screen richness without overspending, its marketing leaned on critical acclaim rather than mass-market saturation, and its box office trajectory showed resilience rather than flash-in-the-pan numbers. For USA audiences, the takeaway is that a film does not need to spend excessively to leave a cultural and financial mark. Materialists may not rival blockbuster franchises in raw revenue, but its intelligent balance of cost and return positions it as a financial success within its category, proving that thoughtful filmmaking and smart strategy remain viable paths in today's cinematic economy. Materialists, the 2025 romantic comedy drama directed by Celine Song and starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal, is currently available to watch through multiple platforms in the United States, offering audiences a variety of options depending on how they prefer to experience films. The movie premiered in theaters on June 13, 2025, allowing viewers to enjoy the story on the big screen with full visual and auditory immersion. The theatrical release remains the ideal format for those who want to experience the scale of the film's cinematography, the richness of its sound design, and the subtleties of its performances as intended by the filmmakers. In a theater, the combination of large-scale visuals, surround sound, and audience reactions can heighten emotional engagement, particularly during intimate dialogue scenes or high-stakes dramatic moments, making the viewing experience more compelling and memorable. For audiences who are unable to see the film in theaters or prefer the comfort of home viewing, Materialists is available for digital purchase or rental on platforms such as Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, Fandango at Home, Google Play, YouTube, and Plex. Rental prices generally start around $19.99, while purchase options are typically $24.99, allowing viewers to either watch the film within a limited time frame or own a copy for repeated viewing. Rental options usually provide a 30-day window to begin watching, with 48 hours to finish the film once playback has started, giving flexibility to fit busy schedules. Purchasing the digital version ensures permanent access and the ability to rewatch, pause, and analyze the film at your own pace, which is ideal for viewers who want to focus on nuanced performances, production design, or visual symbolism that might be missed on a first viewing. Physical media remains another strong option for those who prefer high-quality picture and sound, or for collectors who enjoy having tangible copies of films. Materialists was released on Blu-ray, 4K UHD, and DVD on July 29, 2025, including limited edition steelbook versions. Physical copies often include extra features such as director commentary, behind-the-scenes footage, and making of documentaries, which give audiences insight into the creative process behind the film. These materials enhance the viewing experience by revealing production challenges, cinematography choices, and the director's vision, allowing viewers to appreciate the artistry that might otherwise go unnoticed in a casual watch. For home viewers with high-end sound systems or large screens, physical media offers the best combination of audio fidelity, visual clarity, and additional content. Streaming platforms are expected to host Materialists in the near future, with Max, formerly HBO Max, likely being the first major subscription service to offer the film. This aligns with A24’s typical distribution strategy for its releases. While the exact release date on streaming is currently unconfirmed, the eventual availability on a subscription platform will provide audiences with convenient, repeated access without additional cost beyond their existing subscription. This mode is particularly appealing for casual viewers, families, or social groups who want to watch the film together at home without purchasing or renting it individually. However, it is important to note that streaming compression can sometimes slightly reduce visual and audio fidelity compared to theatrical projection or physical media, potentially diminishing some of the cinematic details, such as subtle lighting choices or nuanced sound design. The choice of viewing method can significantly influence the audience's experience of Materialists. In a theater, viewers can fully appreciate the scale of New York City settings, the detailed production design, and the immersive score, all of which contribute to the emotional resonance of the story. At home, watching on a large-screen television with a surround sound system or quality headphones provides a more personal and controlled experience, allowing viewers to focus closely on performances, dialogue subtleties, and visual motifs. Digital rentals and purchases offer flexibility and accessibility, while physical media gives the highest quality and the added benefit of bonus content for deeper engagement. For viewers interested in repeated viewings or film analysis, starting with a theatrical experience, followed by a digital or physical copy, is ideal. The initial theater visit captures the emotional impact, while home versions allow careful observation of the cinematography, editing, production design, costume details, and sound. For casual or budget-conscious viewers, waiting for the streaming release is a convenient option, ensuring that the film remains accessible without the need for individual rental or purchase. Ultimately, Materialists provides multiple avenues for audiences to engage with the film in a way that suits their preferences and circumstances. Whether experienced in theaters for scale, rented or purchased digitally for flexibility, enjoyed on Blu-ray for maximum quality and extras, or streamed on subscription platforms for convenience, the film is designed to be accessible while retaining its emotional and artistic impact. For USA audiences, these options ensure that anyone interested in this critically acclaimed story of love, ambition, and human connection can find a format that delivers the experience they want, whether for immersive viewing, detailed analysis, or casual enjoyment at home. The combination of theatrical, digital, physical, and streaming options ensures that Materialists is both widely accessible and rewarding, regardless of how viewers choose to watch. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.